It started like any other quiet evening in the hostel's common lounge. Dim yellow lights, the hum of a ceiling fan, and the distant sound of rain brushing softly against the windows. I had stayed up late, half working on my laptop, half listening to the faint laughter coming from the kitchen where the girls often gathered after dinner. There were 4 of them: Mira, Lena, Tessa, and Ria. Each carried her own kind of presence. Mira, the calm one, spoke with her eyes more than her words. Lena, confident and playful, always had that teasing smile that disarmed everyone. Tessa was quiet but observant. She noticed things most people didn't. And Ria, the warm-hearted peacemaker, could make even silence feel gentle. We'd all grown familiar over months of shared late nights and accidental conversations. But that night something was different, almost charged. Maybe it was the weather, maybe the comfort of familiarity. When I looked up from my screen, I found Mira watching me from across the room, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "Still working?" she asked softly. Her voice carried warmth, the kind that made the room feel smaller. I nodded, smiling back. She crossed the room slowly, the rhythm of her steps matching the soft patter of rain outside. When she reached me, she hesitated for just a heartbeat, then sat down beside me on the couch. Her perfume, something faintly floral, lingered in the air. "You look tired," she whispered, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my forehead. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like the world paused. Before I could answer, Lena appeared from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Her eyes narrowed playfully when she saw Mira sitting close. "Oh, I see," she said, setting the mugs down a little too loudly. "Didn't know I was interrupting something." Mira just smiled, unbothered. "You weren't," she said softly. But Lena's smirk deepened as she sat on the other side of me. The energy shifted, subtle, electric. Ria and Tessa followed soon after, drawn by curiosity, or maybe instinct. The room, once calm, now felt alive with unspoken feelings. A quiet competition wrapped in laughter. "Looks like our boy here is getting popular tonight," Tessa teased, folding her arms. I tried to laugh it off, but my pulse betrayed me. Every glance, every small movement felt amplified. The way Myra's fingers rested lightly on my arm, how Lena leaned a little too close, her breath brushing my shoulder, how Ria's laughter filled the silence just to keep the mood from breaking. In that moment, surrounded by their warmth and quiet chaos, I felt something shift inside me. A realization that the fragile balance between friendship and something deeper was beginning to blur. The rain outside grew louder, but inside the lounge, time seemed to slow. For women, one shared space, and a tension neither of us could name yet. That was the night everything began to change. The next morning felt different, though no one said why. There was a quiet undercurrent in the air, the kind that lingers after something unspoken happens. Breakfast chatter filled the kitchen. The scrape of spoons, the hiss of the kettle, the smell of instant coffee. But beneath it all, a strange awareness hummed between us. Mira sat near the window, scrolling through her phone with that practiced calm she always carried. Lena, on the other hand, was unusually animated, cracking jokes that didn't quite land, as if she were trying to reclaim something she thought she'd lost. Ria and Tessa exchanged glances that said more than words, curiosity mixed with mild amusement. When I entered, conversation dipped for a brief moment, then quickly resumed, though lighter than before. I tried to act natural, offering a smile. "Morning," I said. Lena was the first to respond. "Well, if it isn't the star of last night," she teased, her grin wide but her tone softer than usual. Mira didn't look up, though I caught the small flicker of a smile tugging at her lips. I sat down at the table, the chair creaking beneath me. "I think you're exaggerating," I said, trying to laugh it off. "Oh, come on," Ria chimed in, handing me a cup of coffee. "You should have seen yourself. 4 of us talking, and you looked ready to disappear into that couch." Everyone laughed, even Mira. It broke the tension a little, though not entirely. There was still something simmering under their playful banter, something none of us were brave enough to name. After breakfast, we lingered in the lounge again. The morning light poured through the windows, golden and soft. Tessa sat on the armrest, humming quietly. Ria sprawled across the couch, her laughter easy and bright. Mira remained seated by the window, lost in thought. Lena stood behind me, her hand brushing my shoulder as she leaned forward to look at my phone. "Still pretending to work?" she whispered. Her voice was teasing, but there was a softness to it, the kind that blurred the line between friendly and something else. I turned to answer, but before I could, Mira spoke from across the room. "Maybe let him focus, Lena." The words were simple, calm, but they carried weight. The air stilled for a heartbeat. Lena straightened, a hint of challenge in her eyes. Ria let out a quiet, "Oh no," under her breath, sensing the tension build again. I tried to diffuse it, laughing lightly. "I think I can handle both work and distractions." That earned a laugh from Tessa, who shook her head. "You're in trouble now," she said, smiling. But the truth was she was right. The mood had changed. The easy friendship we once had now pulsed with quiet tension. Playful, confusing, magnetic. As the day stretched on, every glance carried meaning. Every touch lingered a little longer than it should. It wasn't love yet, not exactly. But it was becoming something dangerously close. And none of us knew how to stop it. A few days passed, and the tension softened into something quieter. Less storm, more undercurrent. The laughter returned, but now it came with glances that lingered half a second too long. Voices that lowered instinctively when I walked in. That evening, the hostel was quieter than usual. The others had gone out for dinner, but Mira stayed behind, saying she needed to finish some paperwork. I stayed too, partly for the peace, partly for reasons I didn't want to admit. The lounge was wrapped in the warmth of the setting sun. I sat across from her, pretending to read, though my eyes rarely left the way light brushed her face. She noticed, of course, Mira always noticed. "Are you really reading that?" she asked, smiling faintly. "Or just pretending so you don't have to talk?" I laughed softly. "Maybe both." She leaned back, eyes tracing the fading glow through the window. "You're quiet when you're thinking," she said. "That's something I like about you. You don't rush your words." It was the kind of compliment that sounded simple but carried warmth. I didn't know how to respond at first. I just watched her. The small lines near her eyes when she smiled, the calm confidence in the way she held herself. "You notice too much," I finally said. "I notice what matters." Her tone was calm, but her eyes softened, open, almost vulnerable. Then, for the first time, she hesitated. "You know, sometimes it feels strange, being around you." The air between us changed. "How so?" I asked quietly. She paused, running her thumb along the edge of her mug. "You remind me of who I used to be, before everything got complicated. Before people expected me to be the responsible one all the time." There was no need for her to explain more. I understood the weight of age, of experience, of always being the steady one. "You don't always have to be," I said. "Not here." For a moment, she looked at me, really looked, and something in her expression faltered. Then she smiled, softer than before. "Careful," she whispered. "You're making it hard to stay sensible." The words stayed with me long after she left to her room. They weren't a confession, not exactly, but they carried the same weight. Later that night, when I stepped out for some air, I saw her again. Leaning on the balcony rail, arms crossed against the chill. She didn't speak, and neither did I. We just stood there, side by side, the silence more intimate than words could ever be. Below us, the rain had returned. Steady, rhythmic, grounding. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a fleeting attraction or curiosity. It was something quieter, deeper. something neither of us expected but couldn't ignore anymore. The days that followed were quietly tense, not in a hostile way, but in that fragile balance between what's spoken and what's only felt. Mira and I had grown noticeably closer, though we both tried to act as if nothing had changed. The others noticed, of course. They always did. Lena was the first to make a remark. "You two seem to be in your own little world lately," she said one evening, tossing a cushion onto the couch beside me. Her smile was light, but her eyes searched mine for something. An explanation, maybe. Mira, sitting across from us, gave a polite smile. "We were just talking," she said simply. "Talking," Lena repeated with a playful laugh. "Sure. You talk like people who share a secret." Her tone was teasing, but underneath it, there was something else. A flicker of emotion she was trying to hide behind humor. Ria, sensing the tension, nudged her. "Leave them be. Not everything needs a story." But everything already was a story. Every glance, every pause, every unspoken moment between Mira and me. Later that night, I found myself sitting alone in the courtyard. The night breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine from the garden, and the lights from the windows above glowed faintly against the dark. That's when Tessa appeared, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You look like you need this," she said, sitting beside me. I smiled, taking the cup. "Thanks." She was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. "You know, I think Mira really likes you. She won't say it, but she's different when you're around." I glanced at her, uncertain how to answer. "We've just become close," I said carefully. Tessa gave a small, knowing smile. "Close is how it starts." Then, after a pause, she added, "Just don't hurt her. She's been through a lot more than she lets on." Her words lingered, their weight subtle but real. I nodded, grateful for her honesty. "I wouldn't," I said. Back inside, the atmosphere felt different. Ria and Lena were on the couch watching a movie, but their laughter seemed slightly forced, the kind used to fill uncomfortable silence. Mira wasn't there. She'd gone to her room early, claiming she was tired. Lena glanced at me as I passed by. "She's changing because of you?" she said softly, not unkindly, but with a hint of sadness. "Just be sure you know what you want." I didn't answer. How could I, when I wasn't sure myself? That night, as I lay awake, I thought of Myra's voice, her calm steadiness, the way she looked at me like she saw more than I said. I thought of Lena's laughter fading too soon, Ria's kindness, Tessa's quiet understanding. The lines between friendship and something deeper were fading, melting into something both beautiful and dangerous. And even as I told myself I wouldn't cross them, my heart already had. It happened on a weekend evening, the kind that begins softly and ends with truths no one was ready to face. The hostel was alive with quiet music, the faint strumming of a guitar from somewhere down the hall, and laughter drifting between rooms. But inside our lounge, the air felt heavier, as if all the unspoken things between us had finally decided to surface. We were all there, Mira, Lena, Ria, Tessa, and me, gathered for what was supposed to be a simple dinner. Ria had cooked, Tessa had set the table, and Lena, ever the entertainer, poured the wine. Mira sat at the end, composed as always, though I noticed how she avoided my eyes. For most of the meal, conversation stayed light. We talked about work, upcoming plans, silly hostel gossip. But beneath it, tension rippled. Too subtle for words, too strong to ignore. It was Lena who finally broke the fragile peace. "So," she began, swirling her glass, "are we all just going to pretend that nothing's changed?" Ria frowned. "Lena, no, really," she interrupted, turning to me. "You think we don't see it? The looks, the silences, the way Mira suddenly disappears when you walk in." The words hit harder than I expected. Myra's expression barely shifted, but I saw the flicker in her eyes. Hurt, maybe shame. "That's enough," Tessa said softly, but Lena shook her head. No, it's not. I just want honesty. We all deserve that, don't we? The room fell silent except for the rain beginning outside, as if even the weather had turned to listen. I looked at Mira, then back at Lena, struggling for the right words. It's not what you think, I said quietly. Lena laughed once, though it wasn't amusement. It never is. Mira finally spoke then, her voice calm, almost too calm. Lena, please. This isn't fair to anyone. No, Lena said, standing now. What's not fair is pretending we're all the same when clearly we're not. Her voice cracked near the end, betraying what she'd been hiding. Not anger, but hurt. The others watched in silence, unsure whether to intervene. I rose slowly, my heart pounding. Lena, I never meant to hurt you or anyone here. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a second the teasing, confident girl was gone. What replaced her was someone vulnerable, uncertain. Maybe not, she said softly. But sometimes, just being kind is enough to make someone hope. Those words hung in the air like smoke, lingering long after she left the room. Mira sighed quietly, closing her eyes. Ria moved to comfort Lena, while Tessa gave me a small, sympathetic glance. I sat down again, feeling the weight of everything. The closeness that had once felt comforting now fractured by what was finally spoken aloud. That night, for the first time since I'd come to that hostel, I didn't sleep easily. The sound of the rain outside felt like a heartbeat. Steady, relentless, impossible to ignore. Something had broken between us, and I wasn't sure if it could ever return to what it was before. The next morning arrived slowly, as if the world itself was reluctant to move forward. The hostel's usual chatter was gone, replaced by a silence that carried the weight of what had happened. Even the air felt still, the kind of stillness that follows a storm, when everyone is waiting to see what's left standing. I sat in the courtyard, coffee in hand, watching sunlight break through the thin mist that clung to the garden. My thoughts wandered restlessly, to Lena's trembling voice, to Myra's quiet restraint, to the guilt that settled deep in my chest. When the door creaked open, I didn't have to look up to know it was her. Myra's steps were soft, steady. She always moved like she was measuring each moment carefully, as if not to disturb what couldn't be fixed. Couldn't sleep? She asked gently. I smiled faintly. Not much. You? She shook her head. Barely at all. For a while we said nothing. The sound of birds and the faint rustle of leaves filled the silence between us. Then, without turning to me, she said, You didn't deserve that scene last night. But Lena, she wasn't wrong to feel what she felt. Her voice was calm, but heavy. I never wanted to hurt anyone, I said quietly. I didn't know what to do with what I was feeling. She looked at me then, her eyes soft but searching. And what are you feeling? It was a question I'd been avoiding, maybe because naming it would make it real. Confused, I admitted, but also drawn to you. I can't explain it. It's not just attraction. It's the way you make everything feel quiet, even when things are falling apart. Myra's lips curved into the faintest smile, though her eyes glistened. You're too young to talk like that, she teased gently, but her voice cracked at the edges. Maybe, I said, smiling back, or maybe I just finally met someone worth listening to. She looked away, exhaling softly. You know how this looks, right? You and me. People will talk. They'll misunderstand. I already understand, I replied. And that's enough for me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. She reached out, resting her hand on mine. It wasn't dramatic or impulsive, just quiet, steady contact. Her skin was cool, her touch deliberate. It said more than any confession could. I don't know where this goes, she whispered, and I can't promise it won't hurt. I'm not asking for promises, I said. Just honesty. She nodded slowly. The faint smile returned, tinged with sadness. Then let's start there. When she stood to leave, The space beside me felt colder. But something in the air had changed. Lighter, clearer. We hadn't solved anything, but we'd stopped pretending. The storm had passed. What remained was fragile but real, a truth neither of us could unsee. Days turned into weeks, and the hostel slowly found its rhythm again. The laughter returned, softer now, but genuine. The air that once felt heavy began to breathe again. We all moved carefully, as if learning how to exist in the same space without reopening old wounds. Lena began avoiding long conversations with me, though she no longer looked angry when we crossed paths. Her energy had changed, quieter, more reflective. Ria, ever the gentle mediator, made sure the group dinners continued. She believed in healing through small, ordinary things. And Tessa, as always, balanced silence with presence. Watching, understanding, never judging. As for Mira and me, our connection remained, though it shifted into something quieter. Less about discovery, more about understanding. We didn't label it, didn't force it to become something it wasn't ready to be. We simply allowed it to be. One evening, just before sunset, I found her in the courtyard again, the same place where we'd had our difficult conversation weeks earlier. She was watering the small potted plants lined along the wall, her sleeves rolled up, strands of hair falling loosely around her face. "You're still here," I said softly. She smiled without looking up. "I live here, remember? You know what I mean." She glanced at me then, that same calm, steady look that had always disarmed me. "I stayed because I wanted to," she said. "Not because it's easy, but because it still feels right." There was no need for grand gestures or declarations. The silence that followed was comfortable, the kind that only exists when two people have already said everything that mattered. "Lena's leaving next month," she said after a moment. "She got a job offer in another city." I nodded slowly. "Maybe that's good for her. A new start. Maybe it's good for all of us," Mira replied. Then she added, almost under her breath, "We learned something from this, didn't we?" I thought about it, about jealousy, unspoken affection, the fragile line between comfort and desire. "We learned that connection can be both beautiful and unfair," I said. "And that sometimes, caring for someone doesn't mean holding on to them. It means understanding them." She smiled then, not sadly, but with quiet gratitude. "That's a wise thing to say," she murmured. "You've grown since the night we met." "Maybe because of you," I said, and meant it. The sun dipped low, painting everything in gold. She stepped closer, resting her hand lightly on my arm. The same touch she'd given me that first night, but now filled with something deeper, peace. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be seen." I wanted to say something back, but the words refused to come. Instead, I smiled, covering her hand with mine. The moment didn't need a promise or an ending. It was enough, because sometimes love doesn't announce itself in forever. It lives quietly in the spaces where two hearts finally understand each other. And that's where our story chose to rest.